My brother told the whole family I never helped Dad. He said it at the kitchen table, with Dad still in the hospital 2 floors above us. I didn't argue. I just opened my bag and pulled out a folder the hospital social worker had handed me that morning. The room went quiet. My mother Eleanor sat with her tea growing cold. My Aunt Patricia had her hand over her mouth. Derek was standing at the head of the table like he was about to give a speech at a banquet. "Claire visited twice," he said, shaking his head slowly. "Maybe 3 times. I was the one taking leave from work. I was the one who sat with him through chemo. I was there every single day." He said it with such confidence, such practiced grief. I had heard him rehearse versions of this story for months. Every time Mom called to check in, Derek would sigh and say, "She's just not showing up, Mom. I don't know what else to tell you." His voice was heavy with resentment. "Little sis couldn't handle it." "That's fine. Some people just don't have the stomach for caregiving." I set the folder on the table, plain manila. No label. I had picked it up from Linda Okonkwo at 9:58 that morning, 2 minutes before our scheduled appointment. Linda had handed it to me with both hands, like it was something sacred. "We keep these for 5 years, she had said quietly. I checked the logs before I printed them. "I think you should see them." I hadn't opened it yet. I had driven straight from the hospital to my parents' house. The folder sat on the passenger seat the whole drive, and I didn't touch it. I was afraid of what I might find. If this story strikes a chord with you, please consider subscribing to Revenger. Your support helps me keep sharing stories like this one. Derek was still talking. "I took 14 months off work." 14 months. Do you know what that cost me? I sacrificed my career, my savings, everything. I slid the folder across the table toward my mother. "Ah!" "Open it." Mom looked at Derek first. She always looked at Derek first. He was her firstborn, the golden child, the one who could do no wrong. She had told me once that Derek was just protective when he called to tell her I wasn't visiting Dad. "He means well," she would say. "He's just stressed." Mom opened the folder. Her hands shook as she pulled out the stack of papers. They were bound with a thick rubber band, and when she removed it, the sheets fanned out across the table like a deck of cards. Pages and pages of sign-in sheets, 14 months of them. Name, date, time in, time out, every single one filled out by me. I pointed to the first page. "That's the day after his diagnosis." I was there at 6:30 in the morning. I stayed until 11 at night. Mom flipped through. Her eyes moved faster as she went. Here's 3 days later. Here's the day they started chemo. Here's the day the doctor told us it had spread to his liver. I kept my voice flat. I was there for all of it. Derek laughed, actually laughed. "You printed some visitor logs." "That means nothing. You could have signed in and left." I pulled the second document from my bag. This one was separate, folded into thirds. I had unfolded it so many times that the creases were soft. "How many days did you visit, Derek?" He crossed his arms. "I don't have to justify myself to you." 3, I said. "Your name appears 3 times in 14 months. 3 times. I unfolded the second document. A standard state reimbursement form. Application for family caregiver stipend. The signature at the bottom matched the signature on Derek's driver's license. "This is the agreement you signed in month 2, I said. "You claimed you were providing daily care. Daily, for at least 20 hours per week. The state paid you $12,480 over 14 months. For care you never gave." Mom's face went white. She looked at Derek. "Is that true?" Derek grabbed the paper. His eyes scanned it, and for a split second I saw something flicker. Fear. Then it was gone, replaced by that same arrogant smile. Linda Okonkwo, the social worker. She pulled the logs this morning, I said. She also found a statement from the head nurse on Dad's floor. That nurse saw you exactly once for less than 2 minutes. I reached into my bag one more time. I pulled out a stack of photographs. Me and Dad in the hospital room, me holding his hand while he slept, me sitting in the recliner chair with a blanket over my legs. I took unpaid leave, I said. Do you know what that cost me? I missed my rent. I nearly lost my car, but I was there. Every single day. Derek slammed his hand on the table. You think you're so perfect? You think a few pieces of paper change anything? I didn't blink. Prove it, he said. Prove I wasn't there. The room waited. I looked at the folder in my hands and knew exactly what I had to do. 3 days after the kitchen table confrontation, I sat in my car outside the hospital for 20 minutes before going in. I had the folder on the passenger seat. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Derek's face. That smug laugh. Prove it. At 9 in the morning, I walked into the social work office on the 3rd floor. Linda Okonkwo was already at her desk. She looked up when I knocked on the open door. Claire, she said, I was hoping you'd come back. I sat down across from her. I need to understand everything. How this works. How he did it. She closed the file on her desk and folded her hands. Your brother applied for the family caregiver stipend through the state's Medicaid waiver program. He certified that he was providing at least 20 hours of direct care per week. Based on that certification, the state paid him a total of $12,480 over 14 months. That's the full amount, I said, for every single month. Yes, from the month after Dad's diagnosis until last month. The number landed hard in my chest. My father had been sick for 14 months. Derek had been collecting money for 14 months. Every single month, while I was the one driving Dad to chemo. Every single month, while I was the one holding the bucket when he got sick. Linda opened a drawer and pulled out a thicker folder. I made copies of everything. The application forms, the monthly certification sheets, and the reimbursement agreement your brother signed. She slid a single sheet across the desk. I recognized Derek's handwriting immediately. Looping letters, that confident slant. The signature at the bottom matched the visitor logs exactly. And the nurse, I said. You mentioned a nurse. Linda nodded. Her name is Margaret O'Leary. She was the head nurse on your father's floor for the first 9 months of his treatment. I asked her to write a statement. She handed me a single page typed in small font. I read it twice. The nurse said she remembered me. She remembered me because I came so often. She remembered the 2 nights I spent in the recliner chair. And she remembered Derek. She saw him exactly once. He stood in the doorway for less than 2 minutes, made a phone call, and left. Once, I whispered. Once, Linda confirmed. I also checked the medication administration logs. Those are signed every time a family member is present during a dose. Your name appears 83 times over the 14 months. Your brother's name appears 0 times. I set the papers down carefully. There was a steadiness in my hands now. What can I do with this? Linda leaned back in her chair. That depends on what you want. You can take it to Adult Protective Services. You can file a complaint with the state's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit. Or you can talk to a lawyer who specializes in elder law. Which one do you recommend? I have a card, she said. She pulled it from her desk drawer. Margaret Chen. She's handled caregiver fraud cases before. She's good and she's honest. I took the card. Margaret Chen, elder law attorney. An address downtown. I thanked Linda. I meant it. She had handed me more than paperwork. She had handed me a weapon. 3 hours later, I was sitting in Margaret Chen's office. It was small, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and a window that looked out at the street. Margaret was in her mid-40s, with sharp eyes and a voice that did not waste words. "Show me what you have," she said. I opened the folder. Visitor logs, reimbursement agreement, nurse statement. Linda's summary. Margaret read everything without speaking. She turned each page slowly. When she finished, she set them down and looked at me. "Your brother took $12,480 from a program designed to help families care for dying loved ones," she said. "And he did it while providing no care at all. Less. This is fraud, plain and simple." She tapped the reimbursement agreement. "His signature is on every monthly certification. The state will want this. Will he go to jail? Probably not, but he'll be ordered to repay every dollar, plus penalties, plus interest, and he'll be banned from serving as a power of attorney or caregiver for any family member in the future." I thought about my mother, about Aunt Patricia, about how they had believed him. "What about his job?" I asked. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "Where does he work?" "Pacific Care Health Systems." She smiled. It was a thin smile, but it was real. "Healthcare company. Ethics policy. If the state finds him guilty of fraud, his employer will be notified." I don't see how he keeps his job. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, not satisfaction, clarity. "So, we prepare the complaint," I said. "We do, and we file it in 2 days," Margaret said. "But we time it carefully. When is the next family gathering?" I thought about it. Dad's memorial service is in 9 days. Margaret nodded slowly. "That's perfect. We prepare the complaint now, but we don't tell anyone. At the service, you make sure everyone knows the truth, and I'll be there to announce the complaint." She wrote something on a legal pad. Then she looked up at me. I walked out of her office feeling lighter than I had in months. Derek had laughed at me. He had told me to prove it. I was going to prove it in front of everyone he cared about. 2 days before Dad died, I learned Derek had moved him to Sunset Hills Hospice. I was still at home, getting ready to visit the hospital, when the oncology floor nurse called. Her voice was low, like she was afraid of being overheard. "Ms. Vance, your father was transferred this morning. I wasn't allowed to tell you, but I thought you should know." I stopped breathing for a second. "Who authorized that?" "I'm sorry. I really can't say more." I didn't need her to say more. I knew exactly who had done it. Sunset Hills was on the other side of town. A 40-minute drive through afternoon traffic. I didn't remember most of it. I just kept seeing my father's face, confused and scared, being moved without anyone telling him why. The hospice was a low building with beige walls and fake flowers in the lobby. It smelled like disinfectant and canned soup. I found my father's room at the end of a long hallway. He was asleep. His breathing was shallow. I stood there for a moment. Then I went looking for Derek. The next day at 4 p.m., I found him in the family lounge. He was sitting in a plastic chair, scrolling through his phone. He looked up when I walked in and smiled. "Little sis, I figured you'd show up eventually." "You moved him," I said, "without telling me." Derek put his phone down, leaned back in the chair. "You weren't involved, Claire. I made the decision that was best for Dad." "Best for him?" "You moved him to a cut-rate facility without consulting his medical team. Without telling me. Without telling Mom." He waved a hand. "Mom agreed it was fine." I stared at him. "No, she didn't." "She will." He said it like it was already decided. "Look, you had your chance to help. You just didn't show up." There it was, the same lie, the same weapon. I felt something cold settle in my chest. Not anger, not sadness, something sharper. But I didn't have the folder yet. I didn't have the proof. Not today. "You moved him without my consent," I said. "Without any consultation." That's not care. That's control. Derek stood up. He was taller than me. He always used that. He stepped closer, trying to make me back up. I didn't. Prove it, he said. The words hung in the air. I looked him in the eye. I will. I turned and walked out. Behind me, I heard his voice. Good luck, little sis. I smiled. He had no idea what was coming. 6 days after Dad died, I was at Margaret Chen's office at 10 minutes to 9. Her building was downtown, a narrow glass tower with a lobby that smelled like old coffee and fresh carpet. I rode the elevator to the 12th floor and walked into a reception area so quiet I could hear the clock on the wall ticking. The receptionist asked me to wait. I sat in a leather chair and clutched the folder in my lap. I had read every page at least a dozen times over the past 3 days. The logs, the reimbursement form, Linda's summary, Margaret O'Leary's statement. I knew every number by heart. But I still felt like I was holding something fragile, something that could break if I set it down. The door opened and Margaret Chen stepped out. She nodded at me, her expression unreadable behind those glasses that hung from a chain around her neck. Claire, come in. Her office was all business. A wooden desk with nothing on it except a laptop, a phone, and a single framed photo of what looked like her daughter. She gestured to the chair across from her, and I sat down. I reviewed everything you gave me last time, she said. I am ready to move forward. I opened the folder and laid the pages across her desk, one by one. The visitor logs, the reimbursement agreement, Linda's summary, Margaret O'Leary's statement. The medication logs, I arranged them in neat rows like evidence in a courtroom. Margaret picked up the reimbursement agreement first. She held it close to her face, studying the signature. Then she picked up the logs. She flipped through them slowly, counting under her breath. When she finished, she set them down and looked at me. He signed this, she said, not a question. Who goes? And the state paid him a total of $12,480 over 14 months. Please. She picked up the logs again. He visited 3 times in 14 months. 3 times, I said, total. Margaret placed the papers back on the desk and folded her hands. She looked at me with an expression I could not read. Then she spoke. Claire, this is a straightforward case. The reimbursement agreement is signed. The logs contradict his claims. The nurse's statement corroborates the logs. The state has a clear process for recovering fraudulently obtained funds, and your brother's employer will want to know about this as well. She paused. He could be ordered to repay the full $12,480, plus penalties. I estimate another $2,500 at least, depending on the investigation timeline. I nodded. I had expected that. He will also likely be banned from serving his power of attorney for any family member, she continued. The state takes a very dim view of caregiver fraud, especially when it involves a parent. Banned from power of attorney. That meant he could never do this to anyone else in our family. Never pull the same trick with our mother. Never make himself the gatekeeper of someone else's care. Good, I said. Margaret leaned back in her chair. There is one question I need to ask you. When do you want to file the complaint with the state? I did not understand. As soon as possible. She nodded slowly. I can file the complaint today. The state will investigate, and your brother will be notified. But if I file now, he will know before the memorial service. He will have time to prepare a story, to spin it to your mother, to make himself the victim. I stared at the papers on her desk. If we wait, she said, we can serve him at the service. In front of everyone, your mother, your aunt, the friends, the cousins, every single person he lied to. I sat in silence for a long moment. The memorial service was in 8 days. 8 days of waiting. 8 days of sitting with the truth while Derek walked around thinking he had won. But Margaret was right. If I filed now, he would have time to fight. To lie, to twist the story until it was unrecognizable. If I waited, he would have no warning, no chance to prepare. The truth would land on him like a freight train in front of the whole family. Yes, I said. Margaret opened a drawer and pulled out a manila envelope. She wrote something on the front and sealed it. I will file the complaint tomorrow, she said. That way it will be on record, but he will not be notified yet. At the service, you will stand up, hand these out, and I will be in the back row. When he tries to react, I will step forward and announce that the complaint has been filed. She handed me the envelope. It was heavy, thick with copies. Here are copies of everything, one for each guest. Bring them with you. I took the envelope. My hands were steady. Claire, Margaret said, once we do this, there is no going back. Taxed. He will lose his job. He will lose the inheritance. He will lose the trust of every person in that room. Are you prepared for that? I looked at the sealed envelope in my hands. I thought of my father, lying in a cheaper hospice while Derek collected his monthly payment. I thought of the 3 signatures on the visitor log. 3 in 14 months. Yes, I said. I have been prepared for 14 months. Margaret nodded once. Then we are ready. I will see you at the service. I stood up and shook her hand. Her grip was firm, quick. Then I walked out of her office, down the elevator, and into the bright afternoon sunlight. The envelope was tucked under my arm. 8 days until the truth came out. I smiled. The room had that funeral home smell, old wood, flowers, perfume mixed with dust. I sat in the 3rd row, the manila envelope on my lap. My mother was beside me, her hand on my arm. Patricia sat on her other side, already crying. Derek walked to the podium. He adjusted the microphone. He looked solemn and tired, like a man who had carried a great weight. He said, "Thank you all for coming. My father was my hero. For 14 months, I gave up everything to be by his side. I held his hand. I held his arm. I made sure he was never alone. I felt my chest go still. I was the one who sat with him through the long nights," Derek said. "I was the one who put my career on hold, who sacrificed my savings, who gave him every ounce of strength I had. And I would do it all again, because that is what family does." My mother sniffled beside me. Patricia reached for a tissue. Derek wiped his eye. "Some people think caregiving is easy. They drop in when they feel guilty, take a photo, post it online, but they don't stay. They don't do the work." He paused and looked straight at me. "I know who was there, and I know who wasn't." My hands were cold. I had prepared for this moment for 12 days. But hearing him say it aloud, with my father's face on a screen behind him, with my mother crying beside me, with these people believing him, it hit me somewhere deep. But I did not move. Derek finished his speech. He talked about fishing trips, about a baseball game. The room applauded. My mother stood and hugged him. Patricia hugged him. He sat down in the front row, 2 seats from me. He looked at me and smiled. Not a real smile. "A victory smile," the officiant said. "Would anyone else like to share a memory?" I stood up. I walked to the podium. I did not look at Derek. I placed the manila envelope on the lectern and opened it. The room was quiet. A woman in the back whispered something. I pulled out the first stack of paper, copies of the visitor logs. 14 months. Every page stamped with the hospital seal. I said, "My brother just told you he was my father's sole caregiver. He said he put his career on hold. He said he was there every day." I held up a page. These are the hospital visitor logs. Every person who visited my father had to sign in. My name appears here 187 times. I looked at the room. His name appears 3 times. 3 in 14 months. Patricia stopped crying. Her mouth opened slightly. My mother said, "Claire, what are you doing?" I reached into the envelope again. I pulled out the next document. This is a state reimbursement form. It shows that Derek claimed the family caregiver stipend. A total of $12,480 over 14 months. I paused. Money. The state paid him to care for my father, which he did not do. The room was so silent I heard the clock ticking on the wall. Derek stood up. "This is ridiculous." I kept going. "This is a statement from Margaret O'Leary, the head nurse on my father's floor. She wrote that Derek visited once for less than 2 minutes." I held up another page. These are the medication administration logs. My name appears 83 times. My brother's name does not appear once. Derek walked toward me. "You are out of your mind." I looked at him. I did not raise my voice. "You told everyone I never helped. You told them I visited twice. You told them you were the one who cared for Dad, and you took $12,000 for care you never gave." He grabbed for the papers. A voice from the back of the room said, "Mr. Vance, I would not do that." Margaret Chen stepped into the aisle. She was in a dark blue suit, a manila file in her hand. She said, "I am Margaret Chen, an attorney representing Claire Vance. I have filed a formal fraud complaint with the State Medicaid Fraud Unit. The complaint has been accepted and is under investigation." Derek stopped. His face went pale. "You filed a complaint?" 7 days ago, Margaret said. "I have the confirmation here." My mother turned to me. Her eyes were wet. Her voice was barely a whisper. "Claire, I am so sorry." I did not answer. I looked at her. I looked at Derek. I looked at the faces in the room, people who had believed him, who had judged me for years. I stepped away from the podium. I walked down the aisle, past Derek, past Margaret, past Patricia. The copies of the logs were still scattered on the lectern. Someone picked one up and started reading. I reached the door. My mother called my name. I kept walking. The parking lot was gray under an overcast sky. I got into my car and sat there, both hands on the wheel, breathing. The truth was out. And I felt relief and sadness and something else, something I could not name. I started the engine and drove away. 45 days after the memorial service, the investigation concluded. 45 days of silence, of waiting, of checking my phone every time it buzzed. I kept working. I kept going to the grocery store, walking the dog, paying my bills. Normal things, things that felt foreign. Margaret called me on a Tuesday. I was at my desk, staring at a logo design I had been revising for 3 hours. She said 4 words, "It's over, he's done." I drove to her office. The lobby still smelled like old coffee and fresh carpet. The elevator took forever. I did not run. I walked. Margaret was waiting at her desk, a thin file open in front of her. She pushed her glasses up and smiled, not a warm smile, a professional one, the kind that says "I told you so" without saying it. "The state completed their review," she said. "They confirmed the fraud. Derek is ordered to repay the full $12,480 plus $2,500 in penalties." I nodded. I had known the numbers. I had memorized them weeks ago. But hearing it out loud in her crisp voice made it real. "There is more," she said. "He is banned from serving as power of attorney or caregiver for any family member. In any capacity." The state made that part very clear. I thought about my mother, about what that meant for her. She was 68, healthy but not young. Derek had been her golden child, her firstborn, the one she defended at every turn. Now he could not legally make a single decision for her. 3 visits. The man who told everyone I never helped. "One more thing," Margaret said. She folded her hands on the desk. Pacific Care Health Systems received a copy of the complaint. They opened their own internal investigation. They will advise me when they finish. I thanked her. I picked up the file. I walked out of her office and stood in the hallway for a moment, letting the silence settle around me. 5 days later, Margaret called again. "Pacific Care terminated him this morning," she said. "Ethics violation." I felt something shift in my chest, not satisfaction, not joy. Something quieter, something like the last domino falling into place. "He had been there for 9 years, I said. "Not anymore," Margaret said. "He will have a hard time finding another job in healthcare. Not with a state fraud finding on his record." My mother called that evening. I had not spoken to her since the memorial service. She had called my name as I walked out. I had kept walking. 50 days had passed. I answered the phone because I knew I would have to eventually. "Claire," she said. Her voice was small, fragile. The voice of someone who had been told they were wrong and was still deciding what to do with that information. "Why, Mom, I know about the investigation," she said. "Margaret called me. She said Derek has to pay back the money. She said he lost his job." I did not say anything. I let her talk. "I believed him," she said. "He told me you never came. He told me he was the one there every day. I wanted to believe him. He is my son." She paused. I was wrong. The words hung between us. I could hear her breathing. I could hear the television in the background. A game show, someone laughing. "I am sorry, Claire." She said it. 3 words. I had imagined this moment. I had wondered what I would feel. Relief. Vindication. Maybe a door opening. I felt none of that. I felt a door closing. "Thank you for saying that, Mom," I said. "But the trust is broken. You chose his lies over my truth. You let him take control of Dad's care. You let him move him to a hospice I had never heard of. You did not ask me once, not once." She started to cry, soft at first, then louder. I did not comfort her. I sat there holding the phone, feeling the distance between us widen with every sob. "I need time," I said. "I do not know if I can go back to how things were. I do not know if I want to." She said my name again. I heard the hurt in it. I did not answer. "I have to go, Mom." I hung up. I sat in my apartment, the lights off, the city outside my window glittering in the dark. I thought about Dad, about the 18-7 visits I had spent beside his bed, holding his hand, reading him the newspaper because the chemo made it hard for him to focus. About the 3 times Derek had bothered to show up. About the $12,048 he had stolen, the penalties, the job, the ban. Justice had arrived. It had been quiet and legal and thorough. It had arrived in a file folder with a crisp summary and a professional smile. And still, I felt sad. Derek started sending me emails 3 days later. The first one said, "Claire, please, let it go. We are family." I did not reply. The second one said, "I made a mistake. I am sorry. Can we talk?" I did not reply. The third one said, "Mom is devastated. She needs you. Stop being petty." I never replied. I never will. My father's will was read on a Tuesday afternoon. Margaret Chen sat across from me in her office, the documents spread across her desk like a road map I hadn't asked for. $200,000, she said. "The house sale and his savings, all to you." I stared at the number. My father had been a high school math teacher. He drove a 10-year-old sedan. He clipped coupons. But he had also bought his house in 1987 before the neighborhood exploded, and he had never touched his retirement accounts. "Your father drafted the will 3 years before he died," Margaret said. "He left everything to you. He knew." I sat there for a long moment. The glass building hummed around us. Somewhere below, traffic moved through the gray afternoon. "I don't want to keep it all," I said. Margaret raised an eyebrow. "I want to start something," I said. "A fund for other families. Or caregivers." She nodded slowly. "Tell me what you're thinking." I told her about the nights I had spent in the hospital lounge watching other families struggle. The woman whose husband had pancreatic cancer and who had to choose between buying groceries and paying for parking. The man who took unpaid leave and lost his apartment. The daughter who slept in her car because she couldn't afford a hotel and couldn't bear to leave. $50,000, I said. "I want to seed a fund. Grants for families caring for cancer patients. Small amounts, but enough to make a difference." Margaret smiled. "That is a beautiful idea." It took 1 week to set up. Margaret handled the legal structure. I found a nonprofit that agreed to administer the grants. I named it the Vance Caregiver Support Fund. My father's name. His legacy. The day I signed the papers, I drove to the hospital. Not to visit anyone, just to sit in the parking lot and remember. The fund launched 60 days after the memorial. No press release, no ceremony, just a website with an application form and a payment schedule. The first grant went to a woman whose husband was starting chemo. She needed help with gas money and groceries. $500, she cried on the phone. I thought about my father, the way he had squeezed my hand when the pain was bad, the way he had whispered thank you when he couldn't speak above a whisper, the way he had looked at me with eyes that said everything. I thought about Derek too. I couldn't help it. I thought about the emails gathering dust in my inbox. The first one, then the second, then the third. All the same pattern, all asking me to let it go. I would not let it go. Letting it go would mean pretending it didn't happen. Letting it go would mean erasing 107 visits filled with coffee, newspapers, and hand-holding. Letting it go would mean letting him win. The trust was broken. I could accept that. I could live with it. What I could not do was pretend it didn't matter. My mother called twice. I answered the second time. She said, "Claire, I am so sorry." I said, "I know you are." She said, "Can we try to move forward?" I paused. I thought about the kitchen table, the folder in my hands, the way she had looked at Derek first, the way she always looked at Derek first. "I need time," I said. "I don't know how long." She started to cry. I did not cry. I had done all my crying in hospital rooms, in quiet night shifts, in the long hours when no one was watching. "Okay," she said. "I understand." I hung up. That was 3 months ago. I have not seen her since. I have not seen Derek since the memorial service. I do not know if I will ever see them again. I do not know if that is forgiveness or just survival. Maybe it is both. The fund grew slower than I hoped. Small donations came in from people who had read about it. A few local churches contributed. I spent my weekends building the grant applications, reviewing the requests, writing the checks. Every grant was a small victory. Every grant was a middle finger to Derek's lies. I realized something along the way. The revenge I wanted was not really about hurting him. It was about being seen. It was about having the truth acknowledged. It was about proving that I had been there, that I had mattered, that I had done the work. The visitor logs did that. The reimbursement form did that. The investigation did that, but the fund did something else. It took the hurt and turned it into help. It took the grief and turned it into purpose. My father never wanted a memorial fund. He never wanted a plaque or a scholarship. But he would have understood this. He would have understood giving a tired woman enough money to buy gas so she could drive her husband to chemo. He would have understood the daughter sleeping in her car, the son losing his apartment, the family that had to choose between food and parking. I think about those families now. I think about the next application I will review. I think about the grant I will write tomorrow. And I do not think about Derek. I think about my father's hand in mine. I think about the mornings I read him the newspaper. I think about the life he lived and the care he deserved and the truth that finally spoke for itself. That truth is still speaking. Thank you for listening. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more stories of family justice.